underneath, it's important to take those off. You don't want to use a foam roller. Standing here, we've got about 40, 45. As a matter of fact, 95% of those circuit color switches installed without consultation are installed incorrectly, and there's no benefit. All right, I've done as much as I can for Ellen and Tristan. So we'll get going. We've got 26 people in the room. Let's you guys can all. I know it's for some of you the first time being a presenter on here. So you got your controls to the right. You can click on chat, and you can see the chat window. People are leaving some messages. We got Ruth, who's I know is from Canada. Our great Ellen's logging on. We've got Bob in Seattle, Ivan in Croatia, awesome. Sarah, Dubai, hey, nice to see you here. I got your text. I'll respond to you. There's Ellen, awesome.
Hi, Ellen.
Hey, Sasha.
Leslie from England.
Hey, Alan.
Robin, Idaho. Alan was in there already. Stephen, USA. Dara, New Jersey, awesome. So I know there's a few more people in the room. Please let us know where you're from. Okay, Heike from Washington. Alexandra, from Portland. Awesome. Remco again from the Netherlands. Nice to see you. You were here yesterday as well. All right, great. So here we are. One casualty. Tristan's not here, so maybe you might still come in, but maybe not. So, all right. So this webinar, we've never done this before. So I don't know. We have no PowerPoint presentation or anything. Oh, cool. Dan's here from the Netherlands. Awesome. So we're just going to wing it, so to speak. So, all right. So radiation shielding, and yeah, radiation is bad for us, and our health is affected, and all these sorts of things. I guess we do home assessments in the homes of people that, sort of come to a critical mass, with most people, as in they have chronic health issues that just don't go away, they're visiting the doctor for so long. And whilst we also cannot guarantee results, which a doctor can't either, by the way, the approach is sound. The body rests and repairs at night, and we're going to craft an environment for the body to do the resting and the regenerating as optimal as possible. And yeah, over the last 38 years, we've seen wonderful results doing that. Now, it could be that somebody has, a number of symptoms, and that most of those go away or all of them go away. You never really know quite sure what happens. But yeah, basically, we don't actually treat the person. We treat your sleeping environment as the most important area. Get that perfect and create a space for the body to rest and regenerate optimally, and then has a chance to do that healing. And so for some people, this is very subtle when that's done. Some people have an immediate effect, especially people, sort of headachy sort of complaints, or, sometimes waking up early in the morning, not being able to get back to sleep. We've seen many stories where you put a shielding in and bang, very quickly, they start responding to it, and it's very different. Other people, nothing happens, and it sort of stays in place. That'll stop in a minute. Stays in place, and then after some time, things start changing and things starts happening. So always fingers crossed and see what happens. I often, because with mitigating radiation, there's often like a to-do list that you have. There'll be this issue. Hey, great, Tristan is joining the room. He's making his way in. Cool, excellent, thank you. Just mute your mic, Tristan, if you could. So there's often a to-do list. So somebody will start with one thing, and then sort of work down the list to mitigate everything, to deal with everything that was wrong in that assessment that was found. And people that do an assessment, they're often doing the assessment with us, as in you'd be holding the meter, you'll be measuring the wall, you'll be measuring your partner in the bed, whilst we sort of help you facilitate, and we turn off switches and get to the bottom of things. So somebody can mitigate one thing, and then two things can happen. Either they feel an immediate effect and they, oh great, this is working, let's keep going with the to-do list. Or it could be that they have no effect, or they don't feel anything just yet. And then I would call it an unlucky learning experience, because you kind of have to keep steering the course. You have to keep going with all the other issues that were found and create that ideal environment and then watch what happens. So we often tell people, if you're going to start this process, please, in your heart, have peace with the fact that you want to see it through till the end, because that's, of course, where the most results happen. It could also be that if you do one step and there's all these other things still should be doing, that if you do one step and you do feel improvement, that then people take it as an, oh, now it's fixed, I don't have to do anything more. And that's not quite true either. With health, I also often explain this to my students. Let's say your body has a point where there's perfect health, right? So I'll sit here. And so we do things to our body, bad things. We are exposed to radiation, we don't sleep well, we sleep too short, we have a bad mattress, materials are wrong, we have intolerance issues, we eat the wrong stuff, we breathe the wrong stuff, all this stuff, right? And our bodies are amazing. It maintains balance, which in medicine I have a fancy word for it. It's called homeostasis, right? And so from your perfect health position, your body is starting to degrade away from perfect health because it's out of balance, but your body is maintaining that balance, maintaining homeostasis. So you don't actually notice anything, but you are moving away from that ideal health. And then comes to a point where your body can no longer maintain homeostasis. And as soon as you slip past that point, the balance is out, and that's when a symptom will start occurring. That's what a symptom is. The body telling you that it can no longer maintain homeostasis, right? So you're here. It's only a little bit of difference here. So if you're just sitting near that edge, and let's say you put shielding pane in place and you shield the room against radio frequency radiation, and it takes that edge off, that could be that helps you go from here to there. And so symptoms or the symptom or symptoms disappear for you. Wonderful. But are you healthy? No, still have a bit to go, right? You want to be all the way over here. So you got to steer the course and sort of follow that through. So anyway, I've got 5 people here with me today with a story which is very personal and quite impressive sort of stories, and I'll let them of course tell it to you. And I think some of these people have had this and it's really sort of spurred them on, it motivated them to say, wow, this was amazing, more people should know about this, other people are suffering with similar things, I should be helping them. And that's maybe what motivated them to become a consultant and start helping other people. Okay, so we've got Stephanie Brenning here, who's in the United States. We've got Tom Landon Smith, who's in Australia. We've got Alan, which you've seen a lot in my webinars as well, because he's often assisting me, which is great. And I've got Tristan Baker also in Australia. And we've got Sasha Hannon, who's actually the CEO of GEOVITAL, and he's based in Austria. That's why it's dark outside. But most of us is dark outside. Some of us are up at 5, 6 in the morning, and Sasha is sitting there at 9 o'clock at night. Well, I might start perhaps with, if that's okay, maybe with Alan, just to kind of get him to get going, and then I'll pass the baton to Sasha. I don't know if he's got other things to do. I'd love you to stay till the end, but otherwise we can see you another time, and then we'll basically go around the room and let everybody tell their story. There's no real punchline, I guess, to do. Well, the punchline is that, shielding can have a profound effect. If you're weighing up, well, should I make some changes? Should I mitigate my home, or should I get a home assessed and see if maybe there's something wrong in my house? Hopefully this will, get you going. Or, if you're thinking about doing training and wanting to be a consultant, we could certainly use a lot more help. The inquiries have never been as much as they are now. So yeah, hopefully this might motivate you. So thank you very much for everybody here for wanting to share your personal stories. I appreciate that a lot. Yeah, perhaps Stephanie, if you could. Sorry, I was going to start with Ellen.
Yeah, hi everyone, welcome. My journey to where I am now started by discovering that I had what we called Bosniak 2 cysts. One of the cysts was an egg size, so egg size cyst in my left kidney, and in my right side of my kidney was 5 pea-sized Bosniak 2 cysts. The symptoms became by blood in the urine, and I thought maybe it's a kidney stone, so I went to the doctor, and they put an ultrasound. They did an ultrasound check on me and discovered that it wasn't anything but these cysts. So they all got fairly scared about it, and it also scared me at the time. So I went to see a naturopath. I had Vega testing. Very good naturopath whom I still know. And he's actually a Dutch, Indonesian guy and studied for many, many years. And he said that I don't have cancer. And he set me on change my diet, change my sort of lifestyles a little bit as far as nutrition. And we managed to consolidate the size of these cysts for a good 3 years. They still bothered me. And I kept looking into research, and I found GEOVITAL. GEOVITAL, anything that I come across that I'm interested in, I always want to investigate fully. So I signed up for the course, not with great intentions of being a consultant, but to find out what was the depth of the issue that I may have been suffering. So I did the course, and then was, after the course, very keen to get, or really wanted to get, these underbed geopathic stress mats. So I put the underbed type 3 or standard strength mats in place after actually a GEOVITAL affiliate nearby me came along and discovered that I had a water vein. So I didn't realize that I'd built my house on top of a water vein. It was about 1.5 meters, 5 feet wide, and it went right through the house. It goes from one part of my land, 2 hectares, and right through and meets the creek down on the other end. I can follow it all the way now. So it goes under both bedrooms, under both beds. And I suppose I was very dubious about geopathic stress. When I first started dowsing, I went, oh, this looks a little bit too cosmic for me. But now it's pretty much the most important thing I do for people, as well as assessing EMFs. Okay, so I put the underbed mats under the bed, and I was due to have my yearly ultrasound to check the size of the cysts. And that happened 7 months after I had the underbed mats put in. The urologist rang me and said, can you please go back and get another check? There seems to be a mistake in the ultrasound. So I went back and did another check, and it was reported to him. And then he rang me and said, you come and see me, please. And I said, is there a problem? He said, no, it's fine. Just come and see me. He looked at me and said, what are you doing? And I said, I've discovered a company called GEOVITAL and I've done some training with them. Now I've put the underbed mats in place. And he said, well, whatever you're doing, your cysts have reduced in size since the last ultrasound 1 year ago by 17%. In ultrasounds up to now, every year, it's like the next year was 7%. The next year was 10%. There's no more dull ache. The urologist doesn't really believe that what I've put in place has worked, though he referred my story to another of his colleagues, and his colleague now sends me leads for assessments. It's not often I come across a water vein, but it is something that I carefully look for, of course, along with fault lines and ground mixing. And Curry and Hartman lines, of course, are very important. I have found one since in Melbourne, a water vein under a house, and the lady was suffering scoliosis. She now has a GEOVITAL mattress. She has underbed mat, a daytime area mat in her house, and she is starting to feel what she thinks is better. And when I say scoliosis, her spine is like a licorice twist. So we also found magnetic fields in her house, and that's another issue. And she's moved most of her time down to the backyard, which has escaped those. So the whole picture of looking at geopathic stress and EMFs in the home is really important. And I emphasize the importance of geopathic stress. It's completely changed my life. 8, 9 years ago, I was on a disability pension without much of a view of the future. So I'm very appreciative to, and I'll have to say right back to Werner and Werner Hannon, the original CEO of GeoVital, who found out about this geopathic stress and ways to mitigate it. It likely wouldn't be sitting here talking with you today if I hadn't found that. So I'm now happily being an engineer before in the aviation industry, working with Qantas Airways. Great job, great travel, though now I get to help people, which I wasn't able to do in the workshop. So I love this job, being able to help people. And, the biggest reward for me is, say, a call I had a few weeks ago was a lady called Jane. She rang up and said, "Alan, I can now go to the supermarket again. Chris doesn't have to do all my shopping." So this means this lady was housebound for 3.5 years because she couldn't even go to her garden because of the neighbour's Wi-Fi. And we shielded her bedroom, and now she is receded back off being electrohypersensitive. And that call out of the blue the other day was just the best payment. Like, she can now go to the supermarket, whereas she hadn't been able to. That's a pretty simple task for us, you and I, to go to the supermarket, but for her, she hadn't been able to do it. The changes that we make for people when they're prepared to make lifestyle changes is priceless. It's just amazing. Anyway, I think that's pretty much my story. My healing continues to happen with my underbed mats. My stepdaughter as well, she came from Thailand about 4 years ago. She had some troubles at around 12, 13-year-old age there with different things. Now she's smiling and happy, and she's got the underbed mat. She was on top. We were all still sleeping on top of the water vane, but we're now shielded from this geopathic stress shielding. I appreciate it, and thanks, Sasha, and please pass your appreciation on to Werner. Yeah.
All right,
Thank
awesome.
you, Alan.
Thank you very much, Alan. Much appreciated. Just to, I don't know who's in the room with us, as in, the sort of understandings of some terms of health issues. So Alan mentioned a lady who had trouble going to the supermarket because she was electrohypersensitive. And so in case you're not clued in to this yet, there's people who, or I think most or all of our health is affected by the fact that we're exposed to radiation issues. As Dr. Martin Paul, explained in his research, that exposure to things like radio frequency radiation mucks around with the calcium-gated channels that we have in our cells, so that allows an influx of calcium to come in, which is basically a destructive mechanism to the cell, and so any body system can be affected by that. But some people also have, it's referred to as a sensitivity, which I think is not actually quite right. I think everybody's just affected, but at some point it just becomes too much. And for some people, when they're such a stage and being electrohypersensitive, they can feel when there's Wi-Fi nearby, and it really bothers them. Like this lady can't go to the supermarket, or I'm guessing the library, those sorts of things. And we visit those people regularly. We get phone calls regularly. I know Tristan, he'll tell you later, is electrohypersensitive himself, and he can relate to people that have this even better than I can. And he gets his fair share of people in absolute tears on the phone because nobody knows what they're talking about, and they finally get somebody who actually understands it. So, yeah, it could be as simple as not being able to be near Wi-Fi. It can be as severe as just not being able to spend any time or even a short time sitting on a computer. That sensitivity. So it can be very debilitating for people. And I think was it France where somebody got a disability allowance for electric hypersensitivity, which was quite a sort of landmark case. All right. Anyway, thank you, Alan, for sharing that with us. I'll pass over to Sasha Hannon from Austria. He's CEO of GEOVITAL. So I'll let Sasha tell the story. But basically, his dad Werner, started the whole process when the Hannon family was confronted with the breast cancer diagnosis in mum, in Rosita, and basically the doctors gave up, and Werner wasn't accepting that news, and thanks to his attitude, I guess we're all sitting here. So Sasha, please, if you could tell us about maybe how that started, and how mum's doing. I mean, I know we can go into the whole GEOVITAL story, but we'll still be here a whole hour later, and we've got videos of that. But please, what you'd like to share with us, that'd be great. I'll make your video bigger and go for it.
Yeah, hi. I think the most people know the story, but if you go back to the 80s, it was actually 1982 when my mother got the second cancer, and the doctors told us there's nothing to do. She was at this stage 33 years old. I was a little boy, little child, and my brother as well. So we were a young family, and got the message mom is still, let's say, half a year alive. And then things happened like they happened. Yeah. So at this stage, my father came and said, I cannot accept this, what the doctors are talking me. And the good thing was, the important part was that our family, we are all sailors. Yeah. And when you're with your ship on the Atlantic Ocean and something breaks, something happens, yeah, you don't have a garage beside you, you don't have parts or spare parts to repair anything, so you have to deal with the problem on your boat with the things you have on your boat. Yeah, so you're getting very creative to fix the problem, and that was the good thing. And so he went on and said, okay, if the doctors cannot fix the problem, I will do it by myself. Yeah. So, and he invited experts, homeopaths, doctors, engineers, technicians, everybody who had in this time something to do with cancer or alternative methods to cancer. And he said, I will hire the castle in Langenargen. So we have a little nice castle there. For 3 days, we make a congress. So that was the first time ever that a cancer congress was made, that all the experts came together. They know each other from some writings or articles they made, but the most of them, they never met each other. Yeah. So that was the first time that these people came together. And he also went to our bank and put all the money out of the bank. So that was at this stage 50,000 German marks, which was big money. You could buy at these days an apartment for this money. Yeah. And he said, okay, I leave it here on the table, and the guy who brings me the best idea can take it and use it for their science work. Yeah. So that means that they had 3 days this Congress in Langenargen. All the experts, there were over 120 experts there, and only one, how do you say, one listener. So one in the audience. So, and that was Papa, my dad. So, and at this time, that was the first time that he heard about electrosmog, EMF, geopathic stress, water veins, grid lines, and all this stuff. And his first reaction was, what is that for stupid stuff? And in a coffee break, a professor from the University Weinstefan nearby Munich came to him and were asking him, "Hey, listen, Mr. Hannon, I'm watching you now the whole time, and always when my colleagues are talking about geopathic stress and electric problems, you're always smiling and laughing. Why?" He said, "You can tell me a lot of things, but I don't believe this." He said, "Okay, did you ever had a talk with an expert about these things? Did you read some science books about these things?" It would not be a good idea to think about these things or to say that's stupid, if you don't understand this, So, and from this stage on, he started to listen very carefully, and so he took these things serious. And after the 3 days, he came to the end that they had a lot of problems with these things, but nothing against it. So, and there was also Dr. Klemke in this circle of the experts who was talking about medication called tumusteron. So he was one of the leading science from the company ICI in the United States, which were the leading company at this age with alternative cancer methods. So that is company went down or were closed in the, I think, in the end of the 80s, beginning of the 90s. So anyway, he was talking about this treatment, and they had very big success with this, with cancer cells. So my mother was treated with this medication, and after 6 weeks, the cancer was gone. That was not the thing. The question is, what was the cause of the cancer? And at these days, in the area where we were living, we had about 16 cancer families, so cancer in families of our neighbors. And at these days, that was all for us normal. But after the Congress, my father came and said, hey, listen, that's not looking normal, So, and our family was also affected, of these things. So, and after that group, he started to pick some people out of that group and was thinking, okay, this guy can good with this guy, and so, and so that was that group, Arbeitskreis Erdstrahlen Friedrichshafen. So that was the beginning of GeoVital, of technicians, doctors, and all these guys who came together to work on these problems about solutions for geopathic stress and EMF. So, and out of this group, for example, that what you think these, what you know these days, a circuit cutoff switch came out of that group. The shielding meds came out of the group. They started also in the first days with these shielding paints or shielding materials. Yeah? So everything, there was a lot of good ideas, yeah, but it took very long time to get them to work in the way they wanted to have it. So that was a lot of work there. Yeah, these days, now 38 years later, yeah, GeoVital is still there because we think it is a very important part. Yeah, somebody has to save the world, I always say. Yeah, so you are the guys, the consultants, the geobiologists who are working in these topics, and also here, thank you for your work. We're very proud of what you are doing, yeah, to help other people with these problems, and to show them that that is not normal, that is a problem, and to show them how to deal with these problems and how to get these problems away or get these problems off. Yeah. So from the beginning on, since the 80s, the schooling was always a big part, and every knowledge we got, it was for us very important that to share this knowledge, yeah, with other people, that they can help also other people. And I'm very proud about this, that I would say over 90% of all our geobiologists and our consultants are were patients by themselves. Yeah? So everybody has his own story and brings their own story into their work. And that is very important for the patients, because now you have to think these people, these patients, they are, let's say, 5 or 6 or 7 years on their way, and had a talk with a lot of doctors and homeopaths, and everybody was telling them these things and that things, and you do this and you try this, and they spent thousands of dollars or thousands of euros, and nothing helped, or nearly nothing helped. Yeah? And now they have somebody there in their home who understands the situation and the problem, and can tell, hey, listen, I had something similar like you had. Yeah? So, and that is very important and, wie sagt man, sehr wertvoll. Yeah, because now they can talk on the same level. Yeah? And if you have found some problems with electric problems in the sleeping rooms, yeah, you can also test it, for example, with the fuses just immediately, how you can get these things off, yeah, to show them solutions. Okay, and in the most cases, and that is 80% of these things, it's helping. Yeah, because you take these problems and diese Belastung, wie sagt man, these things of the body, and the body can work better. Yeah? The immune system is coming up, and also in these days with the coronavirus, yeah, it is very important that your body can heal itself. Yeah, that your immune system is working, that you have protection against these things. For example, with the phone towers, with 5G and all this stuff, or the things with the electric wiring in your houses, where you bring the problem with the building of the houses into your living rooms and your bedrooms. The most people don't know about these problems, and you know, the nerve system of our humans is working also electric, with an electric system, but with a direct current system, with a tiny system. And if you bring now these alternative current with high power on the body, you can ask yourself who loses the fight, the socket in the wall or yourself. So, and that is always the thing, that you have to keep yourself healthy. And then if you have problems like these days with virus or whatever, the thing is you're more resistant, you have more power again to fight against it. And we will see, if you have a look in the past, we have AIDS, we have Ebola, we have SARS, we have MERS, and now we have Corona. And it is nearly the same with all these new phone standards. You get you got 3G, you got 4G, you got 5G, and Korean and the Japanese are working or starting to work with 6G at the moment. So after every 2 years, you get a new phone standard, and you get more and more problems. And I think that's the same if you have a look in the past, that with all these virus Typen, also the different types of virus, you will have these problems nearly every 8-10 years. So after Corona, there's then in 8 years or in 10 years the next thing coming, and it's good to be prepared for these things or for these situations. And that's the thing, what I always say, somebody has to save the world and somebody has to save the people and have to show them where the problems are, or even a part of it. And that is your work, and that is what are you doing with all your own stories. And I have to say thank you.
All right, thank you, Sasha.
Good.
Great to sort of hear the family story that it all started with. And yeah, quite right. Lots of our consultants have their their own little stories how they got there. I've got my own little story. We're all, well, not all, but most of us are very personally affected by what we're doing. That's why we're so passionate about it. Awesome. Thank you very much, Sasha. If you can hang around, that'd be great. Otherwise, we'll see you next time. All right. I've created also a little poll, which I wouldn't mind putting up. If those are here, could maybe tick which box is applicable to them. Be curious to see sort of why the interest. Why are you here? In the meantime, maybe if we can cross to Stephanie and get Stephanie to tell us her story, that will be great.
Sure. Thanks, Patrick. So I am a GeoVital consultant and a geobiologist. I'm also a nutritional therapist practitioner, and I practice and do assessments here on Orcas Island in Washington State in the US. I also do home consults in San Juan, Vancouver, Canada, the greater Seattle area, Portland, and most of the West Coast. But my story kind of ends with how mitigating my home with GeoVital interventions really helped the final stage of my healing. But I think we kind of need to start at the beginning to get to the end. So I'll let you know that I probably was most likely affected by geopathic stress my entire life from the moment I was born. I was told I was a continuous crying baby. I had sleep issues and night terrors as a child, all the way into my teens. I had some learning difficulties as a young kid, and I feel like it was more than a version of sleeping in my room than just a normal kid. I really didn't want to sleep in my room. And then in my early 20s, I was diagnosed with a neurological autoimmune condition. I had some spots on my brain and some digestive autoimmune things going on. I had several conditions because it kind of cascades. Once you get one autoimmune thing, you kind of start to get another. And that kind of held hands with the chronic fatigue that I was suffering from long before I was actually diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder. And a lot of that, I think, had to do with the accumulation of the geopathic stress throughout my entire lifetime. And all of a sudden, during my diagnosis, I became a lot more aware of my own body, and I found myself extremely sensitive to all radiation. That was the natural radiation or the geopathic stress, as well as the man-made. It was kind of around the same time that there was the boom of Wi-Fi and all these frequencies, you know, they were everywhere, right? Cafes, schools. And so I became very fatigued and drained every time I would walk into these Wi-Fi hot zones. And I also never really woke up feeling rested. I had, you know, fatigue, and if you've ever experienced fatigue, you know what I'm talking about. And it was crushing fatigue if you've ever suffered from chronic fatigue. But I feel like anecdotally, these stressors as well were contributing to my flare-ups and my autoimmune problems, which was loss of balance or the spots on my brain. And so, you know, the doctors pretty much said there was nothing that I could do, right? But I was on a mission to heal, so I turned to natural medicine and I became a nutritional therapist. And I started to heal myself, but I started to feel better. I moved out of the city and my circumstance changed and I moved to the country. Wasn't really aware of how to mitigate for EMS or geopathic stress yet until I found GeoVital, thankfully, and I became a consultant. But by moving to Orcas Island in Washington, I kind of had already mitigated a lot of the man-made radiation that I was feeling. But because I moved to this island with this great nature, I also increased my geopathic stress. And it's interesting because I probably had an affinity to choose this place because it was so high in geopathic stress. So when I assessed my home, and I also had another person assess my home, my house and my bedroom especially was at a stimulation factor of 3,200, which maybe we'll talk about a little more, is really high on the stimulation factor for geopathic stress. I mean, I had Hartman crossings in my room, Hartman crossings on my bed, Curry crossings on my bed, a water vein under my head, you know, a fault line running diagonally through my entire house. And so I was so thankful that I had the mitigation of this GeoVital Type 4 high-strength mat. And I ordered it, and of course I put it under my bed, and it was unprecedented. 5 days later, I woke up and I had energy the entire day. And it was all that hard work that I've done to heal, and then all of a sudden I was optimal. I felt amazed that I had energy. I mean, I had worked really hard, and, you know, I healed my brain. I have no more digestive issues. In a way, mitigating for the geopathic stress and eliminating the man-made radiation as well kind of put my autoimmune condition to sleep, sort of, as just to sleep, so to speak. And I don't really have flare-ups anymore, not like I used to. My chronic fatigue has really disappeared, and it really was just that bubble or the final stage of my healing and that geopathic stress that had probably affected me for 30 plus years. And so now it's kind of the same thing. I help people, and I want to share my story because mitigating this made such a difference in my life. I feel like I'm testimonial enough for that. And I've heard such great things from my clients. It's kind of like Alan said, when someone writes a testimony for you or calls you. I've helped a lot of people with arthritis and the geopathic stress mats. They say they just like have so much more. They can work with their horses or work out in the garden or things like this. And like I said, I'm just here to answer questions, or if anybody feels like they're kind of suffering from the same stuff, you can always give me a call. I'm here. Give me an email. I'm here in the US at Stephanie@nutrition-intuition.com, or I'm on the GeoVital website under consults, and I'd just be happy to answer anybody's questions, or if you want to know a little more about my story, or however you feel about that. Thanks for listening.
All right. Thank you very much, Stephanie. Much appreciated for sharing your story. I did a little poll before, as you saw. I was kind of fascinated by the outcome, actually. I should do that more often. 25% of you feel that the health is affected and you're considering getting a home assessment. 8% of you were potentially considering this as a career option. 33% of you are health practitioners wanting to know more. And another 33% were people that have had done improvements to their home and wanted to hear of other success stories. That's kind of cool. Excellent, great. If we could cut across to Tristan next, that would be great. I'm a little bit more personal involved with Tristan's story as well. He'll tell it himself, but at some point we did a home assessment, which allowed him to make more changes. So anyway, without further ado, I'll cut across to Tristan.
Hi everybody, my name's Tristan. I got really, really sick a few years ago. I used to be a very high achiever. I used to swim 3K a morning, lift weights. I was at uni. I was helping first-year students with maths and physics for engineering whilst studying mechanical engineering myself. I had an accident in 2003 where I had a fall, smashed my back. I had a chiropractor who said to me that a lot of people live with injuries such as myself. Just make some healthy lifestyle changes and you probably be okay. And so I did. So that's when I got into swimming and health. I found that over time, so say in 2010, I started having issues with my legs. Legs were collapsing, and so I went to the doctors and like, what's going on with this? And they eventually found out I had postural nerve compression in my spine. Said that I needed an operation. I probably wouldn't be able to walk in a year. But yeah, go away and see how you go. So I did that. And sure enough, about a year later, I was needing 2 sticks to walk. Didn't end up getting the operation. The neurosurgeons said that they had unfortunately left me too long, and that there was nothing I could do. They could do for me. I was diagnosed with myofascial pain syndrome, fibromyalgia, then chronic fatigue. As I went downhill, and I ended up in a wheelchair. There was days that I couldn't stand, days that I couldn't move my legs. Life wasn't great. I was in a lot of pain. Got to the stage where some days I couldn't even hold a pen. That was the muscles had locked up. With myofascial pain syndrome, one study I was reading described it as basically rigor mortis when you're alive. But I went on a journey of health. One of the neurosurgeons said to me when they first said, look, I'm really sorry, there's nothing that he could do for me. I remember sitting there going, well, I can either accept his reality within his modality and, with all the second, third, seventh opinions I had, I could either accept that and live out the rest of my days, which wasn't going to be huge, or I could reject that reality and go on my own journey of health. So that's what I did. I started studying health rather than engineering. And I found things that kept popping up, like inflammation and how that affects the body. I'm like, well, what causes inflammation? So I looked at foods that affect inflammation. I went to naturopathic health, created this great team of practitioners around me, and they called me the hardest working patient they had ever met, because I always had some new study or some new thing that I was trying. And they all kept saying, why aren't you getting better? We understand that there's things going on, but sometimes we see change in people. And I had neurosurgeons say the same thing. They said, what is it about you? There were studies done where you could have a cross-section of the community over 60 with spinal damage as bad as what I had. They reckon I had the back of a 90-year-old. But not everyone had symptoms. So just because there's a mechanical cause doesn't mean that you necessarily have to be symptomatic. So this was the puzzle that was going on. Now, while I was experiencing incredible headaches and incredible pressure, burning of the skin, and I didn't know what that was all about. Neither did any of my doctors. I remember one day, I was trying to be useful, and we had a young baby, probably about 2, and we were going to move the office and create that into his bedroom. So here I am, crawling, because my legs weren't working. So I'm, crawling up the stairs, and I've gone up to, the desk to turn the Wi-Fi off, to start dismantling everything. I switched the button, and it was like flicking a switch in my head. The headaches and the immense pressure just dropped by maybe 30%, 40%. I was like, well, that's not right. And coming from a science background, well, let's see if we can repeat the experiment. Switched it back on. Whoa, that pain just came back on. This is weird. So I'm turning it off and on, off and on. Yep, okay. So went and spoke to my doctors, mainstream and more natural, and none of them had an idea what was happening. Mainstream doctors suggested I go see a shrink. And I'm like, well, okay, no. Shrinks I saw were like, there's nothing wrong with you. So then I started reading studies, and once again we went back to inflammation and how electromagnetic radiation can create inflammation. I had live blood analysis done. So your red blood cells, should be nice round balls, floating separate from each other, because then you've got your oxygen and your nutrients that attach to those red blood cells. And that provides your oxygen nutrients to your brain, to your muscles. Now, what we found with mine looked like dinner plates stacked on top of each other in a spider's web. So, of course, I wasn't getting the oxygen and the nutrients to my muscles or to my brain. So hence the brain fog, hence the chronic fatigue, hence the tight muscles, and the energy, the mitochondrial energy issues that I was having. When I was doing searches on the internet about symptoms, what kept coming up was hypersensitivity, electromagnetic hypersensitivity. I'm like, well, what can cause this? One thing that kept coming up was smart meters, and I'm like, well, do I have a smart meter? And I went and had a look, and on my bedroom wall was a smart meter. So I'm like, well, when was this installed? Because I didn't know. Went back through my power bills, and the last week that I worked or studied or exercised at any real capacity before I ended up in the wheelchair was the same week a smart meter was put on my bedroom wall. Not saying that it caused the issue. But if you look at it this way, my body was under such immense stress at the time, due to physical issues, due to, I was a type A personality, high achieving, wasn't sleeping great, new baby, all kinds of things. And it was the straw that broke the camel's back. Ended up researching on what to do, looked at some shielding options myself, and I thought, well, I really need an expert to come out. So that's when I found GEOVITAL. I found Patrick. He came out, and all these things that I couldn't get anyone else who could speak about, who knew about what I was talking about. And him and I had great conversations. He's talking about this study, we're talking about that study, and he explained things in a way that was so simple. Explaining how you can have perfect health on one end with no symptoms, all the way to very unhealthy but still no symptoms. And then you can have one thing that takes you over into that symptomatic threshold where the body's not keeping up supply versus demand. And suddenly you're experiencing symptoms, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're healthy to start with. So I had an assessment, listened to Patrick's advice. He also said, well, why don't you come study with us? Why don't you come train with us? And I thought that was a brilliant idea. And I said, well, all right, I'll give you a call when I get better. I'll give you a call in a couple of years, or a year, or whatever I said. And sure enough, after mitigating for electric fields, for high frequency, that's when I had great improvement and went to study with GEOVITAL. And since being with GEOVITAL, like Patrick mentioned, it's amazing when I have a client on the phone who's in tears. He says, this is the first time I've gotten to speak to someone who actually understands what I'm feeling and can explain why I'm feeling it, or why I might be feeling it. I had just a couple of examples. Patrick and I went out and saw a client when I first started with GEOVITAL. Him and his mother he was very, very sick. You could see he was pale, he was sweating, he looked like he was in a lot of pain. Said that he was electromagnetically hypersensitive. His mum wasn't doing well either. And they said, look, this is going to sound really strange, but we're both sleeping in our garden shed. It's the only place in the house where we can sleep, where we don't feel so much pain, so stressed. So Patrick's like, well, let's go measure. So we measured the house. We found high magnetic fields in this house, high frequency fields. And let's go measure the shed. And the shed, there's no magnetic fields, it's at the back of the house. And the high frequency was really, really small compared to the rest of the house. And just the look, I remember the look of relief for these people when they saw that there was a physical reading that made sense with what they were feeling. They thought they were going crazy, which of course they weren't. Anyway, I happened to see this guy a few months later. After he'd mitigated, he'd shielded his bedroom wall, and where he was really heightened, really stressed, he was calm, he was relaxed, and he just came up and gave me a great big hug. And said that it had helped him a lot. I also, just quickly, one more, had another patient who, her doctor, she was seeing, this is Dr. Hart, she was seeing him, is a doctor in Sydney, and he mentioned, okay, with her particular condition, she needed to look at turning off, the power to the house, Wi-Fi, looking at the EMFs in her house. And she said, well, I don't really kind of know about this. She found GEOVITAL. I went out there, did an assessment for her, and she had a smart meter that was on her bedroom wall that was quite highly emitting. so first suggestions we made was she had these other bedrooms in the house, and one of the bedrooms were quite low readings. We said, well, whilst you're waiting to paint, whilst you're waiting for your electricians and to do all these things you need to do that to mitigate these issues that we found, why don't you just move into the other room? Anyway, she did that, and she rings me up the next day and she goes, you'd never believe it. Every morning I wake up, I'm in such pain. I'm sitting on the edge of my bed, holding my head. I get up to go to the bathroom and I'm stumbling, I'm falling over, banging into walls. Because this morning, for the first time in a long time, I just stood up and I walked to the bedroom. And that was just from changing rooms. It had a massive effect for her. Yeah, so I've found that geopathic stress is incredibly interesting, and I like that the other consultants so far have said that they find that particularly helpful, because that was the thing that I saw was just like, whoa, what's going on when Patrick first did that, and he explained the science behind it, and it made a lot of sense, and I found that quite often that lines up a lot with patients' issues, patients' complaints. Yeah, well, there you go. That's my story.
All right. Thank you very much for sharing that, Tristan. Much appreciated. I haven't heard it in this much detail before, so it was yeah. Anyway, thank you very much for sharing. It's not just something you necessarily automatically do with people in a room. So I appreciate it a lot. Awesome. All right. Then last we've got Tom. Tom has recently moved to a new house. He's got a big shielding project underway, shielding the bedrooms later in the year. The rest of the house, if you go to my Facebook page, you can see some videos of me visiting when the project just started about 2 weeks ago, or somewhere thereabouts. All right, great. Over to you, Tom.
Thanks, Patrick. Hi, everyone. Yeah, as Patrick said, we've been shielding our bedrooms. My story starts. I was I was very active. I led an outdoor lifestyle. I became a cross-country skier, and I was on a national cross-country ski team. Went to 3 world championships. I've actually skied in Austria at junior world championships in a place called Saalfelden. And in 1987, I had my first tap on the shoulder, so to speak, where I was out running one day and I just felt exhausted. And up until that point, I was actually doing my last year at school, and up until that point, I'd been completely bulletproof. I felt fantastic all the time. I had grown up on antibiotics. I'd always had recurring tonsillitis growing up. I'd had a sugar diet, high sugar diet. All I ate was carbohydrates, which was what athletes did. You got a carbo load. I ate cereal 8 times a day. I ate 4 bowls of cornflakes with honey for breakfast, and another 4 bowls after school before I'd go training. But yeah, anyway, I was out running this day and I felt exhausted, and I basically slept and did my final year of school. Couldn't train for about a year, my dad finally took me to a naturopath after going from doctor to doctor, trying different antibiotics, and the naturopath said, you've tried cutting out the sugar. I did, and I felt pretty good and able to train again 3 days later. So she told me about gut health. I've known about gut health for a long time, and tried to improve my gut, and that is very tricky. So my story continues with, I went and studied mechanical engineering, became an engineer, and then I was, you know, working, still very fit, and I got into adventure racing, which is, you know, multi-day activities through wild places, with trekking or hiking, mountain biking, climbing, paddling, and navigating the whole way. And I love this. It included all the things I've done for training for cross-country skiing. Absolutely love being outdoors. And anyway, I went along in I was actually in a race that started where Stephanie lives on the Orcas Island. And the race started 3 days later. It was all in Washington State. We paddled from where Stephanie lives onto the mainland, and we were trekking and mountain biking. And we're on the third day, broad daylight, on top of a peak in Skagit County in Washington State. The peak was called Illabot Peak, and we were at a checkpoint that we had to go to on an orienteering leg. And my team of 4, we were looking at the map thinking, how do we get to the next checkpoint? We're on top of this really scrappy peak of rock, and the next checkpoint was down low in this valley. We were making our way, scouting out this chossy gully full of loose, horrible, chossy rock, when another team, we were actually leading the race, and the team that we'd been traveling with were just behind us. And they decided to come down the gully as well. And one of the team members in the other team dislodged this boulder that flew over my head and killed my teammate right in front of me. It nearly took Alina, my wife, out. And it was less than a year later that I got my probably second tap on the shoulder, a wake-up call with health. And I came down with Graves' disease, which is an autoimmune condition where your immune system attacks your thyroid. Now, I did the normal medical treatment. I took drugs. I ended up, 3 years later, having radioactive iodine, which is supposed to kill off a very small part of your thyroid. What the doctor didn't tell me was that apparently it keeps working on your thyroid to kill it off completely. So your thyroid becomes basically non-active. So I took the radioactive iodine, and I left the doctor's practice, the endocrinologist's practice, and thought, what on earth did I do that for? And then I started researching. I thought, there's got to be a better way. And I started researching, and it came back to gut health and toxicity, and I started my health journey. Things weren't good while I was sick. I would wake up at 1 o'clock in the morning, sort of short on air. I couldn't breathe properly. My heart and lungs were working fine, but I just couldn't breathe properly. I felt like I was starving for air. I was frightened. I felt like taking myself to the hospital every night for about 6 months because of this. And, I'd eventually, after half an hour of trying to calm myself, I'd go back to sleep. Total physical symptom. It was terrible. I was choking on food when I was swallowing, or felt like I was choking on food. And there was this cascade of medical intervention where they thought, let's do a barium swallow to see if there's an obstruction in your throat, which there wasn't. So anyway, the alternative path to health, I went to a Swiss clinic. I was desperate. I was a fit person, loved being active in the outdoors, and my health was gone. I couldn't do anything. So I was desperate to get well. We just had, in 2009, we had our first son, and I felt like I was dying. So I was desperate to get well, to be around for him. And I ended up in this Swiss clinic called Paracelsus for 3 weeks, where they removed root canal teeth and mercury amalgams, and gave you infusions of all sorts of nice things. And I felt great. I left there and just felt terrible again. So I continued on the path. It started me on the path. I continued on the path. Changed to a cleaner food, completely clean eating. Real food, real vegetables, real meat, good fats, and that didn't quite get me there, but it improved. Then I healed my gut on a special gut healing program, which I finally found. And 6 months later, I was waking up with energy for the first time since I first had that episode during my last year of school. And I thought, this is fantastic, but I still wasn't quite there. And then I worked with a guy in America, a health coach, called Dr. Pompa, who's been fabulous. And he worked on heavy metal detox, also looking at any toxicity. So whether that's trauma, chemical toxicity, heavy metal toxicity, bacterial, parasitic, viral, there's all sorts of toxins. Now that took me to the next level again. My one remaining symptom was this ectopic heartbeat, which I'd had since the start of Graves' disease. And so I had it for 13 years, and nothing I seemed to do could get rid of it. I couldn't tell why I was getting them sometimes and not others. Sometimes I'd get 1,000 a day. Sometimes I'd get none in a day, but generally I'd get them in over a course of a week. I would get a couple of days where I'd have them, a couple of days where I wouldn't have them. And I couldn't tell what was causing them. I was actually at a conference with Dr. Pompa in Las Vegas in 2018. And I met Nick Pinault, who spoke there. And, of all the people, when you look, you're trying to get well and you're looking on the web and you're trying to find good people. There's so many good people out there. They generally, like Sasha mentioned with the consultants, the majority have had a health issue, and that's how they've come into this field. Most of these doctors, the good doctors, the good naturopaths, the good people, they've had a health journey themselves. So yeah, I met Nick Pinault, and most of these doctors, like Nick Pinault, were talking about EMFs. So I have known for a long time about EMFs and controlling the stuff that you can control, such as turning your phone off at night, or not talking with it at your head, talking with it on speakerphone, limiting the use of it, not using Wi-Fi. I haven't used Wi-Fi in 20 years. I haven't talked with the phone at my head in 15 years. However, that's the things you can control quite easily. But the stuff that we can't control is the phone towers nearby and the things you may not know about, the wiring in the walls causing electric fields onto your body. being in a house that has problems with magnetic fields or geopathic stress. So I took Nick Pinault's course, which is this online course, and Patrick is one of the presenters in that. And I was actually still in America when I contacted Patrick, and 2 months later, I was back in Australia, and Patrick flew to Canberra, where I was living at the time, and he came and assessed. We were looking to buy another place, but when I drove him around for the day looking at different properties, we had a quick look at where we were living, and he uncovered a high magnetic field on my younger son's bed. It was 5 milligauss, and he saw that we had a stray current. He was showing me we had 2 amps of current on our water pipes when all our power was switched off, and it was mind blowing. And he made some suggestions. It was so easy to fix. Drop the magnetic fields to under 0.3 milligauss, which is a safe levels, and we were on our way. So I went and studied the EMF course with Patrick, and I've become a GeoVital consultant. Now, the thing I found is I've been sleeping in a shielded canopy, one of the GeoVital canopies, constantly for the last month. I've had one for about 5 months, but I'd always been going away for work, coming back, and so I'd keep getting ectopic heartbeats, and I felt like it was making a difference when I was at home, but I'd go away and I'd get ectopic heartbeats back after 3 days. Now we've moved to Jindabyne in New South Wales, and I also bought a travel canopy, a canopy I used to take traveling, so that I never have a break from sleeping in a shielded canopy. And my ectopic heartbeats have just stopped. For a month I've been doing this, and a month I haven't had a single ectopic heartbeat, which has not happened in 13 years. So I'm pretty excited. And as everyone's suggested, we all want to help. We all have our own stories, and we really want to help other people, because we know that we know things that help, and it's hard to watch on seeing people sick and thinking they could take this long path that's taken me personally 13 years, or we could fast track that and roll out these solutions. We can do a home assessment and get you on the path. And health is a bit of a can of worms. And I really liked there are, as Patrick originally said, there are multiple facets, and it's like you have a bucket. And I knew personally I had poor gut health, I had heavy metal toxicity, I had some dental toxicity. And then when our teammate in the adventure race was killed right in front of me, that was the thing that triggered my main illness, the autoimmune disease. And I liken that to this bucket. It was already a bit full, and that trauma just overflowed the bucket. Once your bucket overflows, that's, your body crashes. That's it. And to get well, you have to remove the toxicities, which includes the EMF. And you have to provide your body with the right things, such as nutrients, proper food, and it takes patience, and it does take hard work, and it does take patience. but the body will heal given the right things. And I always like to say that when you're at your lowest, it's actually quite a strong position, because you can't, the only way is up. And I find it, there's two paths. You can either go down the conventional treatment, take the drugs, and maybe never, or possibly never get well, because the answer to chronic disease is generally in another place, and that place is giving your body what it needs, and taking patience and hard work. So yeah, I'm pretty excited to be part of the GeoVital team, and I'm very happy to help. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Tom. Much appreciated. Yeah, that was great. More detail than I've ever heard from you. So thank you very much for sharing. Just at the end, I thought, oh, that's a great idea. I'll try and find those links of those videos. So I know you're always a little bit embarrassed about this first video. I'll share the link in the chat at the moment. This was the video. When we finish in a minute, when we're finished, maybe click on it now so it opens, and then do it later. But this was after we found the current on the water pipe. I left, and then I told Tom to get a plumber in, which he didn't. And, so he got his saw, and he went to work on his water pipe. And so you see, his partner is inside with a base or professional Gauss meter on the inside of the house. You see those magnetic field measurements, and then you see Tom basically showing you the difference between metal pipe in place and metal pipe interrupted. And so, yeah, quite spectacular. And then the other thing I was looking for, I can't find it for some reason, is that video we did only recently about the canopy that you put in. Where did that go?
Yeah.
So bear with me 2 seconds. And that one has a particularly funny ending. I know it's on.
I think it's still on the home page.
Yeah, GeoVital website as well. Hang on. Should be there nearly. 2 seconds. There we go. Copy link. All right, back to you. All right, so the next link shows you the video that we did maybe a month ago, 5 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago, where Tom was in Melbourne and sort of didn't want to sort of stay at his friend's house, as in, with no shielding, and have those ectopic heartbeats come back. So we put up a temporary canopy from our Nova fabric. Just in case you're new to the subject, shielding products are vastly different. There's performance differences, there's ingredients, and we're sort of the only people that actually care. Well, it feels like we're the only people that care deeply enough in terms of those products, what ingredients are in there, because we sort of look beyond radiation, as in you still want a healthy environment when you're finished. So that's where very, very, very differently. The way we assess radiation is that we'll, sorry, I'll get you to normal size. The way we assess, we always want to assess the body, where many of our colleagues, and they're all lovely people, they're all measuring the air, which to us makes very little sense because we've seen very much the differences in that. So I'm delighted with the amount of health practitioners that we've got here today. And I thank you for investing your time in investigating a bit further. But yeah, we have a network of consultants, growing network around the world, and we regularly get flown around to do assessments for people. So yeah, there'll be somebody available, for your patients to help them, or you could train with us and be able to offer those assessments yourself. So anyway, so this video of the canopy being hung up, that's interesting to look at. And what I'll share with you as well. And again, of course, these links are going to disappear when I close this room shortly. This last link is an interview with Sasha Hannon and the magazine Raum Zeit in Germany, which has been dubbed for you to make it easier because it was in Germany to great expense. So that tells the full story of GeoVital in more detail. Awesome. All right. Well, first of all, I want to thank everybody for being so kind to share their stories. We can take some questions. So if people can put questions in the chat box, please do so now. Yes, Sasha.
Okay, thank you for sharing all these fantastic stories. Yeah, thank you very much. And yeah, it shows me always the same thing, how important it is to get your own success, and that brings the base to help also other people. Yeah. And my wish or my dream is that the next consultant should be not more than 100 kilometers away from the patient. So if we would get this done, yeah, all over the world, that would help. That would be fantastic. And as more people are working with the GeoVital family and help us with the fight for these things, you all had your own problems, yeah. That would bring a lot of health to the people, and yeah, would help everybody. Yeah. So thank you very much, and for everybody who is interested in these things, what we are doing, who is helping us, what we are doing, and also who's helping you in your work, and to see how important this part is. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Sasha. Yeah, so I don't think there's any questions coming on the chat. We'll give you a few more seconds to quickly put something in. Otherwise, we hope you got something out of it. Deeper understanding of maybe how this can affect people's lives and how mitigating against it in a verifiable way with an approach based on the work with patients. What it can do for people. So yeah, I hope it motivates you going forward in whichever way that might take you. All right, I think that's it for today. So everybody here, thank you very much for sharing your stories. And yeah, anyway, let's, like Sasha says, let's continue to save the world. All right.
Thanks. Bye, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Give us a call.